Welcome to the Midlife Dating Without the Crisis podcast, helping both baby boomers and Gen Xers maintain their sanity and survive the online dating experience. If you're a single guy or gal who find themselves back on the dating market, getting that second chance to an even better relationship, we've got your back. And now, from the 50 Dates at 50 studios, helping to bring the fun back into dating, here's your host, Paul Nelson.
Welcome back to the Midlife Dating Podcast. This is part 3 of my conversation with author Turner Grant, whose book, To Venus and Back, follows his 3-year journey through midlife dating. In the first 2 episodes, we covered Turner's rookie year, the move into online dating, the one-and-done dates, the 3-date rule, and the first longer relationship that helped clarify what he did and did not want, and what also many of us discover do or do not want moving forward. In this final episode, we get into the latter, more intense chapters of the journey. Long-distance dating, emotional projection, mystery, secrecy, and the moment when online dating stops feeling hopeful, it starts feeling like a treadmill. This episode is especially important for baby boomers and Gen Xers because it drives home the truth about what a lot of people don't understand at this age. Everybody has baggage, and dating gets a whole lot better when you stop pretending otherwise and you start learning how to navigate it wisely. Here's part 3 of my conversation with Turner Grant. From Ava, I want to go to your Dakota experience. Now, this is your foray into long-distance dating. Would that be a good...
It was, and this was the month and a half between the Ava bookends, because Ava had dumped me in August.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the train, so my son with disabilities loves trains. I promised him that when I came up to Massachusetts, I'd fly up and we'd take the train back. So it's an 8-hour train ride. Loved it. But there's a lot of time to kill. He tuned me out once we got on the train at South Station in Boston. And I'm looking at after being dumped by Ava, I'm reluctantly looking at the apps again. Right? Because he's playing his video games on the train and I got to do something. So here I'm looking at it, scrolling through. No. And then one pops up. And it's a woman from Paris, France. Oh, what? And this was on OkCupid. First of all, how do we even match? How does this work? But I'm reading her profile, and she was like a poet. It was like incredible. I'm just going, wow. She had her photos on there. She was an attractive woman. No, not a movie star beauty, but just an attractive woman. But man, she had a brain. She could write. It was unbelievable. So I wrote a note. I'm on this speeding train and I'm entering Connecticut or Rhode Island, I guess. Rhode Island before getting to Connecticut. I wrote her a note. It's 12 noon around where I am. And I quickly realized it's 6 hours later in Paris. So it's 6 in the evening where she is. And she immediately writes back. She had a very cute note in her dating profile. If you have black tie in your closet, that's bonus points. And I teed off on that in my response back to her. I said, what if I also have a white dinner jacket in my closet? Do I get extra points? This is all happening between the station in Providence, Rhode Island, and New Haven. For the rest of the train ride back is, as I relay in my memoir, absolute unhidden flirtation commences. She suggests that we talk on the phone, which we do the next day. I compare it to Alice in Wonderland and the Looking Glass. I have just fallen into something that I have never experienced or even thought about in my life. She is articulate, funny, accomplished, and she's in Paris and I'm here. How is this even possible to even work? So that's how that began. It was the train ride. It was her incredible writing that just drew me into her.
At this point, had you actually thought, would I ever be meeting her?
I didn't think I would meet her. I thought it would be some fun, long-distance flirtation.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that would be the extent of it.
Walk us through how that changed.
Okay, so we got on the phone. We had an incredible conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It became somewhat sexual very quickly when she started talking about her bed sheets in her bedroom in Paris. That first phone call went on for 2 hours. It was 8 o'clock my time in the evening and 2 a.m. in the morning her time. She sent a great email the next morning talking about how difficult it was walking into the office with a straight face after having spent half the night up with a man an ocean away. So, I mean, we were just hooked. We did end up having a video call. We connected, and I never forget when she came on the screen, she sort of flipped her hair back, and it was just insane. Oh, we also quickly moved to WhatsApp instead of texting on because of the different technologies and systems and stuff. My first experience with WhatsApp. You also could send voice messages on WhatsApp. So we started sending voice messages to each other. And that just went zimming off the charts. I was hooked and I was game. And it finally dawned on me, well, maybe I should go see her. And I mentioned this to my friend Abby at work. And she's looking at me like, what are you doing? And she went on, what if I told you I met a guy online because she was recently divorced. We were having wild cyber sex, and I was going to hop on a plane to Europe to meet him. And I responded, I'd say you're crazy. Exactly, she said. So here's the feedback I'm getting. And I told her, I said, look, I can't share this with anyone because they would all think I'm crazy, like you just told me I'm crazy. But someone needs to know what I'm doing. And I think I'm going to go meet her in Paris. So I broached that idea in a message, in an email. It was just, the communication was torrid. We would do emails, we did WhatsApp messages, and they would crisscross. So one question would get answered from yesterday and one that just got answered today. I mean, there was one day there were 60 emails and messages and just, it was insane. But I wrote to her, what do you think if I came to meet you? And her response is very simple. What took you so long?
So how long was it before the first interaction until you got on the plane?
It was about 3 weeks.
Wow.
It was that fast. And she gave some options, and we planned it out going back and forth. I would be there for 5 days over a weekend. There was a holiday for her, and she could take an extra day off. There I was on a plane. And as luck would have it, right? You get all these, everything just set, because I had to make excuses to my family. Why are you going to Paris? What are you going to Paris? Work, this, and you're getting everything just set. And then Air France goes on strike. They call one of those 3-day strikes. And my flight's canceled. They'll go like, no. So I'm able to rejigger it. I have to go to Atlanta, then go to Paris. It's a longer flight. But there was something that occurred. I have to backtrack a bit. That early in our conversation or communication, she referenced the movie Out of Africa. That's a movie about an heiress who goes to Africa with her new husband, but meets someone. The someone is Robert Redford's character, Dennis Finch.
Mm-hmm.
And she has this torrid love affair, and it ends tragically when Redford dies in a plane crash. And she tells me, Dakota says this is her favorite movie, and says, maybe you will be my Finch. So here and there in communication leading up to my going to Paris, she starts her emails or communications with me, hi, Finch. And I don't find this endearing at all. I'm like, I'm Turner. I'm not Finch. And as I share this story with Abby, she goes, okay, she may have some fantasy out there that she's looking for someone to fill, and right now you're it. And they're fantasies for a reason. Fantasies are fantasies. They don't come true. So here's this Out of Africa Finch thing. And I never seen the movie, but I watched the movie before I go to Paris. Okay, find out what is this obsession about. And I arrive at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. I go through customs. We text briefly before I lose Wi-Fi. She said, I'm at the arrivals ramp at International. You'll see me, and I have a sign for you. And I'm going, okay, all right. And so I go through the doors. I'm walking down the ramp. There's the crowd of people. I'm looking for her, a woman with a sign. I finally see her. She's shorter than I imagined her being. She's got this sign, and it says, "Hello, Finch." It just feels like a bullet ripped through my heart. And my little voices in my head are going, Finch? She's not here to see you. She's here to see Finch. And so this really hurt. But meeting someone after this torrid 3-week, love affair is going on across the ocean. So I rally and pull myself together, but boy, that was a tough one. She had dared me when we were communicating, so are we going to make love as soon as you arrive in Paris? And I told her before, I said, well, you'll have my answer when I get there. We do, and all that, back at her place, and it's wonderful, it's amazing. And we both fall asleep together in bed. We wake up at the same time, groggy, and just, all these emotions and thoughts going through her head. And she goes, how you doing, Finch? Just like, stop it. And I hesitate long enough where she goes, what's wrong? Are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm just tired. But this Finch thing. So we had this trip planned to go to Giverny, where Monet painted, and then to go to Normandy, and all this takes place. We have all these wonderful romantic ends. And sprinkled in is Finch. And I finally feel like I'm pulling back. Something's wrong. This is not right. Before I left, Abby said, so you're there 5 days. What's going to happen if you're there is day 3 and you realize it's not there? What are you going to do for the next 2 days? And at the time, of course, I said, no, I don't think I have to worry about that. But yet here I was. Day 3, and this isn't going to work out. I relay how it goes in the memoir, and it's tough. Here's a wonderful person I've flown across an ocean to meet, and it's not there. And do I bring up the Finch thing? I don't. And I have to explain this to people in my memoir. I said, so why? Because that's obvious. Just tell her to stop calling you Finch. At this point, as I said to you, there's a lot I don't know. But I'm also learning if there's a red flag, it's a red flag. Pay attention to the red flag.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to know what this was. Was there some sort of fantasy that she had in a man that she was looking to fall in love with? What's the deal? Like with Ava, there was all this baggage. Now, what's the baggage? Baggage comes into play big time in the 3rd year. What's the baggage behind this fantasy of Finch? And I didn't want to call it out because, one, it would be my first time saying something you said to me I don't like. And I didn't want to hurt her feelings. But I also wanted to know what it was. And if I shut it down, I'd never know. So I let it play out to try to find out what the deal was. And she read the signals as I began to pull back. And we both knew as the last day came and arrived that this wasn't going to be what we had hoped. It dawned on me as I was writing the memoir that our last evening in her apartment, where she made dinner, we danced by candlelight, and her apartment had this incredible unobstructed view of the Eiffel Tower, lit up at night, sparkling on the hour every hour, the whole thing. That it was just like the big romantic scene in Out of Africa, where, this is it. It's either going to happen here or it's not. And it becomes a very sad evening in Out of Africa. It was a very sad evening for us, but it was just exactly the same. It's not fireflies in Africa. It's the flickering lights of the Eiffel Tower. We're dancing within each other's arms, but it's incredibly sad. The next day came. She drove me to the airport. We had said our goodbyes the night before. And I could tell she was just trying to get through it to be done. This is when, and it's still to some degree, security's really tight at the Paris airport because of 9/11. There are police everywhere. She drops me off. The police are blowing their whistles, just getting dropped off. She goes, and I go in and try to get the lay of the land there at the airport, looking up at the big board. There's a security guard there. He tells me to come around the other side of the rope because I have a ticket. Then I have this sort of hallucination that someone's calling my name, Turner, Turner. I'm looking around this massive airport concourse, and there she is. Dakota's right there. She's on the other side of the rope, and she's got tears coming down her face. And she said, I'm going to miss you so much. And with the rope between us, we hug, we kiss. She leaves, and I remember saying out loud to myself, what a jerk you are, Turner. You can't do this to women. And the security guy hears it. And he thinks maybe I'm saying something nefarious, and he goes up and with, in a very heavy French accent, Sir, is there something I can help you with? Is there a concern you have? And I have to quickly sort of, no, everything's fine, it's okay. After he's sort of seen this tearful farewell. Mm-hmm. And that's how it ended in Paris. It also coincided just a couple of weeks later. Well, actually, the very next week, the end of the next week, my mother-in-law her health went into dramatic decline. And she ended up passing away. So I have this I felt like I just really hurt someone who was a wonderful woman who didn't deserve it, that it was my fault. I just lose really one of the most important people in my life, my mother-in-law. She was the one that sort of gave me permission. Go find a life. Go find love. Go get help there. It was just a really tough time, and I felt awful. Dakota and I reconciled as friends. We were able to communicate over the next couple of years as friends. She found someone. It was very funny. It fit the same pattern. She said she met someone online. He flew to Paris. They met. They're going to be moving in together. And she even said in her email, sound familiar? So that was her. She was opening up to the world, and men were flying in to see her. So I wasn't the only one. But it was the only one for me.
Mm-hmm. That brings me to, I believe it's Christine, the world traveler. That doesn't quite qualify as long distance, but was she lived in Asia?
That was very different.
Yeah, just give us a brief Reader's Digest version of that one, because I thought that was an interesting story.
Yeah. So in the new year came, and I'm just like, it's 2.5 years since I've been dating, almost 5 years since my wife passed away. I'm just kind of like beaten up, and I decide I'm going to do the online thing for just a couple more months and see what happens. But I want to find someone who's also widowed. So I go back on eHarmony and I meet Christine. And she's clearly an accomplished businesswoman. But every question I ask of her in our emails, our texting, and when we finally have a phone call, she doesn't answer. She always gives me this non-answer. Well, no. I remember in our phone call, I hear some background noise, and I go, oh, what's that background noise? She goes, oh, I'm outside on my balcony just looking out at the view, and some cars below. I said, well, what's your view of? What do you see? And she says, well, you'll get to see it when you come. Okay, well, that's a non-answer. You could just say it. She tells me she lives in a new development in Washington, D.C., it's brand new. Some big-name architects have designed it. Mm-hmm. And I remember going there the next night in my new sports car, sort of driving around the block. Okay, which one could be hers? Which one could be hers? But we continue with these long conversations, and I finally say, you're my mystery girl. Well, she didn't like that. Finally, I just get tired of this. The red flags are all over it. I say, good luck to you. There's something that you're not wanting to share, and I'm done. She talks me into having one more phone call. She says, I'll answer all your questions. We have a phone call that night, and she's clearly nervous, clearly anxious, and she finally says, well, I'm in Singapore. I said, so you're traveling to Singapore? She goes, no, I live here. And she was born in Maryland. I've seen all of her pictures. I mean, everything looks on the up and up, except she never answers questions. You live in Singapore? Well, how? Is there a plan here? And she goes on to explain this. She is CEO of 3 international companies. Her first husband who passed away, so she was widowed. No, second husband passed away, divorced the first. She's lived in Egypt, India, and because of her businesses, has lived in Singapore for 20 years. Her children are there. Her grandchildren are there. She comes to Washington from time to time to see her mother. She said, the world is very small for me. She had houses or homes in Paris, in London. It turned out in Thailand as well. She says, I can live anywhere and do my work, but I can't easily find love. So she cast out this net. She did the same thing that Dakota did. Dakota made her home base Washington. That answered the question, how could someone in Paris find me in Washington? Mm-hmm. Christine did the same thing. She wanted to see who was in Washington. And her plan was, if she met someone and fell in love, she'd simply move there and do her business from there. And that was the story. And I'm just like, okay, is this a crazy woman? What am I supposed to say to this? And she finally says, you're not saying anything. What are you thinking? And I'm just going back and forth, back and forth. And I finally say, I think I'm flattered. You searched the whole world for love and you found me? I guess that's kind of a flattering thing. So we go on to try to do this long distance thing as she's flying around the world, changing phones. I'll get a message on a different WhatsApp. Hey, it's me. She switched phones. And we finally end up meeting. She arranged. She keeps asking, can you come to Europe? Well, I'm at this ball, and I'm coming to San Francisco because there's a ball being put on, and the governor's going to be there. Can you just bop out? Well, I don't have the money to do that. I can't just bop out to San Francisco for a date or bop over to Europe for a date. So she finally rearranges her schedule. We meet in Washington. A couple more deception things come out. We end up, after a long day, a nice day together, we have dinner, or we go for drinks after dinner, and she fesses up, I'm not really 55, I'm 60. And I said, I know. She goes, how do you know? That phone call, when she finally confessed everything, she had shared her last name, and I did some Google searches, and I saw some business documents, some filings, securities filings, that said she was 55, but the date on the document was 5 years old, so she was 60. Mm-hmm. So I told her, that's how I knew. Then I said, when you told me you lived at City Center in Washington, I drove around trying to find where you lived. So there's two big deceptions, her age and where she lived. The living on the other side of the world, that was a biggie. Let's just lay it out there. And then she flew back. We kept in touch. We talked maybe a couple of minutes, a few times a week. And then I decided that spring to plan a trip to New York City. I hadn't been in a while. Love New York City, lots of things to do. After I take my son back to his school in Massachusetts. And then a week before, or maybe 2 weeks before, she and I are talking on the phone. She goes, I'll be in New York in a couple of weeks. I said, well, but you knew I was going to be there too. You didn't say anything. She said, I forgot. She's going there to maybe get some new clients, maybe look for a new home in New York. Finally, just sort of pulling teeth, we finally meet, sort of in a dive champagne bar in Times Square, near where she's staying. And all the things that had happened before, she had alluded to that our conversations and our relationship, whatever the heck it was, had to be kept secret or it would be a problem. I remember sitting there in the bar and she texted, I'm just changing clothes after my meeting, would be down shortly. Is there a black Suburban outside on the curb of her hotel? And I texted back, is this Secret Service or something? And she goes, sort of. I have to travel with security wherever I go. And I want him to be gone when I come down. So, okay, what is this? And so she finally comes down. She comes into this, it's a basement champagne dive bar. And she's just going on like nothing's going on. It's like, how are you doing? And I realize I'm being kept in the dark. The highlight of the evening was her telling me that the best hot dogs in New York City, the vendor stands on the streets, are from Egyptians. She walks me out onto the street. We find an Egyptian. She's talking in Egyptian to this guy. I admit, it was a darn good hot dog. It was really good hot dog. And then we have to say goodbye. And she walks me over to where no one can see us. And she goes, I didn't want you to hug me because if the guy sees you, the security guy, he will come after you. And I'm not kidding. So I'm just like, the next day she texts about a wonderful dinner party she went to, and those voices in my head are going, okay, so here she is. You're in the most incredible city in the world. The best you get is a glass of champagne and a hot dog. And she's talking about dinner parties and saying you really should spend more time with me, all the while trying to evade Guido the hitman and the black Suburbans so you don't get taken down. I finally, in our next phone call, when she's back home, I'm back home, I said, look, this needs to end. She doesn't want it to end. I think she's just looking for a male friend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But then she goes, and this is the title of the chapter of her book, my friends will tell you I can be a very generous woman. So now I'm going like, is she trying to buy me? Is that what this is? And I say, no. And she just hangs up the phone. And that's how it ends. She pops up 4 years later when she's visiting Washington after her mother's passed away and she wants to meet. I'm like, what? And we've all moved on. She's very nice. She's still a business mogul, still running a big slice of the world. So that was Christine.
One of the things I want to touch upon here real quick is, again, and I mentioned it earlier, if you just show up, you put yourself out there, you're going to get a lot of these interesting experiences.
Nobody told me that. Nobody told me that.
Which brings me to one of your stories in the Last Orbits chapter, and this one's on Lisa, the Washington lobbyist, where she was the real busy bee. And tell us about the story about the private event where it's the conversation with a living legend with Bill Clinton and Colin Powell.
That was quite a thing. I actually have the brochure sitting on my shelf over here as
yeah. Give us a little bit of. So you met Lisa, and
we met online, and clearly she was busy. She was a Washington lobbyist. We texted. We arranged phone calls. She traveled a lot. She was between cities. I remember she called me one time just to say, I can't talk. And she hung up. Like, what? So she's finally back in town, and she says there's this all-hands-on-deck event at the Kennedy Center. An evening with Bill Clinton, Colin Powell, moderated by
Bob Schieffer.
Bob Schieffer, who is a legendary CBS correspondent. They booked the Eisenhower Theater for this private event, And the fact that she's invited me, it's like, okay, I guess she's comfortable with me. And I go and pick her up. I'm asking her, well, what do you want me to do? And she said, well, you ran for Congress. I assume you can work a room just like anybody else. I am a pretty active Wall Street investor, so I know all the big names in finance and all that. And we get there, and all of a sudden, there's Warren Buffett, and there's Elon. So all these people are just there. She introduces me to someone. I get saddled with this guy who wants to talk about his football glory days. And finally, they ring the bell to go into the theater because the event's going to begin. She has to catch a plane that night. And she already said she couldn't stay for the whole thing. I offered to take her to the plane to leave the event. So I figured, okay, we're going to sit on the aisle seat and not too far down so we can get out without disturbing everybody. But no. We keep walking down to the fifth row. And it's like, okay, so surely we're going to sit on an aisle seat so we can slip out. Because, these people are live on stage. You could literally spit on each other. You're so close, right? But no. We walk into the middle of the middle seating section. We're 12 seats in. And I'm just going, this is terrible. This is not going to be good. We get about 45 minutes in. There's a long-winded introduction, but finally Clinton and Powell and Schieffer come out on stage, and they're having this three-way conversation. And she leans over and says, okay, after this next question is answered, let's get up and go. When you're at a theater like that, there's light spillover. So if you're in the first few rows, the stage lighting illuminates those first few rows. You're not in the dark. So I realized we're not going to be able to leave in the dark. We're going to be illuminated. So the question's answered, and we get up, and we got 12 people to get past. And, it's always tight, and people can't just sit there. Some can if they have short legs. But people start standing up for us to slip by. So it's like a big wave at a ball game as we go by. Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. And I look back at the stage, and Clinton stops talking because he's looking at this big wave going on in the fifth row. And Colin Powell sees Clinton looking. So Colin Powell looks over and is like, what's going on out there? And then Schieffer realizes his two guests on stage are looking out. So he turns and he looks out as we're going, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, sorry, excuse me. And then the whole freaking place just comes to a halt, and everybody's looking at us walking, trying to squeeze out the aisle without being noticed. Excuse me, as this wave is going on in the fifth row of the Kennedy Center. And I'm just like, this is so freaking rude. And finally we get to the aisle, and we start long stepping our way up that aisle to get out. And we bust through the doors. And one of the special events for that evening is the Yale male a cappella group, the Whiffenpoofs. They were going to sing. And they're right outside the door with their white tie and tails. They're tightening their ties and, helping each other get their white gloves on and getting all. And we bust out, and someone says, "It's go time, guys. It's go time," because we bust out of these doors just trying to get out. And so it's like a bunch of penguins getting all rattled because they're in their white ties and tails, and they're just all jumping around trying to get in line. And this was just like, how could anyone think this is an appropriate thing to do? I drive her to the airport, and my evening is done. And I'm just, this is nuts. Here's another person living in a different world. Mm-hmm. We have another dinner, and she's also quite affluent, and I intentionally sabotaged this one. This needs to end. This is going nowhere. This woman leads a different life. I don't think any guy would want to keep up with her or should. She was also widowed, so she checked that big box. And so I mentioned something about if we would be together, wondering how her finances being far above mine would work out. And she gave me the appropriate indignant look, and it was done. I took her home, and it was over. I just couldn't fathom someone who's so busy. First they call you to say, "Hey, just calling to say I can't talk." And then that's our event for the evening. The big event.
It's one of those things where it's super embarrassing when you're there, but when you look back on it, you can kind of laugh at it.
You do laugh. I still scratch my head, and I'm so glad ending it was the right thing to do. I mean, that's just nuts.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine being in there. I mean, I can actually see it taking place the way you described it in the book. It was one of the more entertaining
I'm glad
parts.
you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So I want to wheel us around to, you have a chapter on leaving Venus where you kind of have some final thoughts on the 54 dates that you went through in this period of time. And I just wanted to get your opinion on some of your final thoughts. And the first one would be how complicated dating relationships are, especially when you add in online dating in our age group.
It's, we all bring baggage, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all bring, because we've lived a life at age 50. We've lived a life and older. And the gaming that online dating is shuffles it in ways that I think aren't good, but potentially in good ways, because you're going to meet people you would not normally meet. Mm-hmm. And that's something I finally embraced, was the opportunity to meet people I would not normally meet. Go for it. But it also, because everybody else is putting themselves out there, and you have just like milliseconds, relatively speaking, to either be a yes or a no, mm-hmm. right? I think online, you have to, and now there are more online dating platforms that have sort of sliced and diced about. I just came to dread it, and it took up so much of my time, and it puts you constantly on the precipice of hope. Mm-hmm. The next one, the next one, the next one, the next one, but then it's not, and it's not, and it's not, over and over and over again in a compressed period of time. It's exhausting, and I literally just said to myself out loud after the last one, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I literally just ended it.
Was it that period of time? I know you mentioned about you came to like the realization that you'd be at some point become a serial dater. Do I have that right?
I had, and mm-hmm. It was what I was alluding to before. You start to hope the next one is going to be the one. So the hope gets so high, and the want sort of gets so high, you just start flipping through them. With Tinder, you can swipe left and swipe right, but you go on the dates because the hope becomes almost desperate at times. Mm-hmm. There has to be someone there, and I have to find them, and the only way to do it is to go through them all. But in the process, you become a serial dater where you're on the treadmill to nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I didn't realize that is what I had become. But it is what I had become. Even though I was fine-tuning my filters and all the things I was putting first and some things I was putting back, I talked myself into the fact that you really just, the person's there, but you have to go through it. So just go through faster. That was the wrong way to go.
Mm-hmm. For me personally, I went through a period of serial dating where I was just lining them up, the next one and the next one. And then finally, after some relationships and whatnot, after a few years, I finally began to get a really good idea of what I was looking for. And now I date with purpose, if you will.
Yes.
I got a pretty good idea. And so I continue to look with my focus is on finding a gal that's really interested in personal growth and likes to learn and keep growing as an individual. And I'm finding that's harder to find these days on online dating.
It is. So you're still doing online dating?
Yes. I was in a relationship a little while ago, but I still dabble in it, if you will. My goal is basically I go out on like one date per month now just to see where it goes.
And that's pretty good. Congratulations on pulling back that much.
Yes. There's a finite amount of time that I will allow myself to put into it. And
good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. That is hard to do.
Yes, it's easy, as you mentioned earlier, to kind of get caught up into, wanting, especially with apps like Tinder or Bumble, where you're fascinated by the next one because that next person might just be everything that you imagine them to be.
Yes,
but they never turn out to be that way.
Absolutely. It helped me to end it. And when I talk about how it was I was able to stop it, was the 3 years did do its job in one way. And that was, I realized how lucky of a person I was. I had a wonderful family. I had a wonderful career. I had wonderful friends. I was a big part of my community. I was a very lucky guy. But it took me going through all that for me to realize that. I wish I had not had to go through that to realize it. But ultimately, that's the conclusion I came to. I'm a lucky guy just the way I am. And if love comes along, it'll come along. But stop going out there and thinking that it's just around the corner. The next time, or the next time, or the next time.
There's another spot where you talked about overanalyzing, and if it seems crazy, it is. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I talked about some of these red flags that I ignored, and a lot of them came out during my year with Emily. There was an event when she was introducing me to her friends. She had a big party, and she had a wide circle of friends, a party at her house. She had just broken up with her ex that I had talked about a year or two before, but he was still in the picture because he was very fond of the children, and the children were fond of him. We went to this party. I got introduced to all the friends. She finally said, okay, you're off the hook. Just enjoy the rest of the evening. I'm going to circulate around and meet some people. The party ended. It was a great success. And this was in August of that year. So we're just not even halfway through that 1 year. But I ignored this. She let me know that before the party, that some friends of her ex-boyfriend would be there. And a report would get back to the ex-boyfriend about me pretty quickly. And it did, but another report also got back. In that 30 minutes, she went out circulating around after she said, okay, you're off the hook. As the story was told, another fellow who thought she was now available started flirting with her. As the story was relayed, she started flirting back. And they got into this very flirty thing, but this was being seen by a friend of the ex. So the ex was told about her flirting with another guy, while me, the new boyfriend, is in the same room. And apparently he threatened to contact me to let me know about this. So in order to get out in front of this, she brought it up. She even shared an email from her ex. And I'm just going like, what the hell? But I ignored it. I ignored it as just this is just one of those things you got to just sort of suck up and deal with. In that one, maybe I overanalyzed it in dismissing it. Other things that were irrelevant, it's where maybe the overanalysis goes in. Well, they said this, or they wore this, or they alluded to this. And I think the overanalyzing comes in more when you're just, you're giving it one day. You got to do a lot of analyzing just on little things. And that's not fair. I just think that just sort of dooms everything, that you've got to draw a conclusion so fast. So there are events that are sort of underanalyzed, and then little things that are overanalyzed in that rush to make the decision, do I need to get to the next one and the next one and the next one? That's where things get overanalyzed. Just calm down. What you're doing. Mm-hmm. 1 a month. Give us some time. Just stop this treadmill. So that's what I'm alluding to.
So one of the other things that you talked about, and I completely agree with this, I've been through it so many times, is what women assume about men online. And that's the process where you've mentioned where us guys are assumed to be lying, cheating, scumbag, stalkers, snake under a rock type guys until we're proven otherwise. And
we're also one of you men. I remember Emily saying that when she was sort of alluding to wanting to find someone who was special. We're guilty by default. We're guilty by association. Mm-hmm. And the specifics of being a cheating scumbag, snake under a rock, stalker, potential serial killer, most women who I met who had been through divorces were bitter.
Yes, I've experienced the same thing. Mm-hmm.
And my being a man made me just like their ex. So I had a hole to dig out of. And I got tired of it. I just got tired of it. I do emphasize that I know why women have to be cautious. There are men out there. I just finished reading the biography of Virginia Giuffre, who was the young woman who was abused by Jeffrey Epstein. It is horrific. And there's everything in the spectrum that women have darn good reason to be suspicious and be wary. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, having to go through the process of just always digging out of the suspicious foxhole that I started out from, I got absolutely sick and tired of it. I didn't want to do it anymore.
It was one of the things that wore me down too, was, as you related, you're digging yourself out of a hole, or I like to use the baseball analogy where you go up to the plate, you've already got 2 strikes against you, and you have to work your way out of that. Next thing you talked about the judgment cloud.
Yeah.
You talked about it a little bit earlier, where you're making quick decision on scraps of information and pictures in a dating profile.
You do, and we all do it. Both sides are guilty of it. And appearance is the biggest one. You and I talked about early on, we're the wingman, not the leading man. Mm-hmm. It doesn't change us from being judgmental about someone's appearance, about what someone says they do, or where they live, or how they may dress in their photos, or the photos that they choose. And even when you meet them, you're having to make judgments. And I didn't like doing that. Whenever you meet someone, like you meet someone in the wild, you may be making judgments, but they're at a much slower pace. You're getting to know them. You're understanding the reasons behind this, or what made them who they are, and this kind of thing. Online dating doesn't allow for that. You have to make judgments. And it was another one of those things that was just exhausting. And I didn't like the person it made me, having to make these judgments for the reasons that we've talked about. I was so glad to be done with that.
One of the last things that you talked about was, out of the 54 women that you met over 3 years, and you only connected in a meaningful way with about 4 or 5 of them, and you feel that was a lousy track record. I'd like to get your thoughts on that, and I'll follow up with
I would be interested in hearing other statistics. I can't emphasize how much work it was, and how much time it took in managing these online dating things. The pre-communication, the getting to know you phase, it was just constant. And looking back, and it took me going through it to be able to assess, so how did it really go? Yeah, 4 or 5. You know, it includes Emily. It includes Christine was one I connected with. The one in Paris, and a couple others that I allude to in the memoir.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it was just like nothing. Yet I pinned hopes on what turned out to be this just sort of smoke that just drifted away. I don't know if that's a good record. I've heard 1 in 10.
Yes.
And if that's so, then I pretty much hit it. I hit the mark, 1 in 10. But given how much effort and emotional effort, just emotional investment in this, I didn't think the payoff was there. It was just not worth it.
I agree with you in that aspect. And in my experience, it's been, I'd say about 10%. 1 out of every 10 women that I would meet online would have relationship potential. I've read several other books, I just can't think of them off the top of my head, where they talk about even meeting people organically. It's about 1 out of every 10 members that are single of the opposite sex that you meet have good relationship potential. And that's what I learned. Initially, when I started dating online and organically, I sucked at it. I was just awful. So that skews the numbers in a really negative direction. And it took me a while to correct out of that, to the point where before COVID, if I matched up with 10 gals, I could easily get 3 or 4 meetups out of that. But in those, it was still difficult to find those that had relationship material, because as soon as you get to a meetup with a lot of them are one and done.
Yes.
And you find out very quickly that a lot of them, they're looking for something else other than what you are. And they do a pretty good job of hiding it. I know this goes both ways for men and women.
They do. We could go down the categories, and they're women who made it clear, or often made it clear in the dating profiles, who they were looking for. And I go through a little list in my memoir about, it's all about so contradictory,
Mm-hmm.
Well, if 1 in 10 is the number, I hit the mark. I didn't know I hit the mark. I'm sorry, you're still out there trying to hit the marks. That's pretty lousy. I'm really sorry to hear that.
For me, I grow tired of it. I really do. But it's actually given me a lot of experience and allowed me to grow in a lot of different ways than I realized I would. So from a personal growth aspect of improving my social skill sets in a lot of different areas, it's helped me on that.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
It does. I agree with that.
Yeah, it's just all the years of all those one and done dates. There are just so many that, and as I went through your book, there were so many. Yeah, I've been through that. I know what he's talking about there. I've been there. I've had that same experience. There are so many other ones that we could go into that we had similar experiences on. And one thing I could just quickly review upon here too is I spend 20 minutes is my allowed maximum per day on anything that would be online dating related.
Wow, you've really got it.
It's way down from what it used to be. And before, I remember pouring my heart into this 10 years ago, where I would be writing. You talked about a lot of the emails that you sent. So you're spending a lot of time composing those. You're still looking at, back at that time, it was more of the legacy websites like eHarmony. I mean, they have apps now like Tinder, but where there's even less information available than some of the older. I tried eHarmony also. And I remember weekends where I would spend 8 hours a day messaging.
Oh my God.
Yes, messaging and
then
trying to move forward. So there were so many, I've been ghosted so many times. My favorite message, by the way, that got me ghosted more than anything else is I would send a message and I would say, "Are you comfortable with moving our conversation to a phone call?" Because there would be some good back and forth going there. And 50% of the time after that, I get ghosted, which tells me they're not serious to begin with.
My line was, shall we move this to the real world? And that could be emails or real texting outside of the app. I was typically not ghosted at that stage.
Mm-hmm.
It was usually, there had to be some in there. I can't remember all of those because there would be more of those. But typically, I will say, when I was just going through the 3 years, toward the end, is when Tinder came out, and I was using Tinder. Tinder was the ghost app.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you take an eHarmony, for instance, and everybody's paying for that one. So
Yes.
they've got some skin in the game. And
They're serious. They
yeah.
really want to find someone. And, the dating apps, at least those early ones, and like eHarmony, they were a filter. These are people, although I will share, on all the apps. I could tell there were hookers on the apps, right?
Yeah,
They're there.
I've seen them on Tinder.
They figured it out. But at that time, eHarmony, people who were coming, it already filtered out people who were, these are people who are serious for the most part. And that I found very helpful. But then when I got to 2 years later and Tinder's out there, that's where it becomes really a game. It's just gaming the whole thing. And as my now 30-year-old son said recently, who's given up on dating for I don't know how long, Dad, the apps are just about keeping you on the app. They don't work. And I think the younger generation, they've all come to that conclusion. The stocks of all the companies that have dating apps, they're in the basement because people realize they don't work. It was a game. And they're not going to do the game anymore.
Yeah, I could talk about this stuff for hours, just based upon some of the things you're saying right there. But I got to wrap this up. So I just wanted to ask you one question, and I'll give you a plug here. What is something that you wish you would have known earlier prior to getting into online dating, that if somebody would have told you that had experience in online or dating, getting back into dating in our age group, in our 50s at that period of time, what is something that you wish somebody would have told you that could have made it easier for you to navigate?
Easier for me.
Or to navigate it better?
Oh, gosh, I have to pause and think about that one. I wish they'd have told me to slow down, as you talked about.
So you got caught up in the cycle there significantly?
I got caught up in the cycle. I felt like it had to just go faster and faster to get through. I was convinced that I would get to the right person, but it was going to take getting through a lot. In reality, it was almost just the opposite. You needed to slow down and stop, get to know people, and turn the filters up a bit, but keep an open mind. I wish someone would have warned me that I was going to get pulled into this, Alice in Wonderland looking glass, where I was going to go places I never thought I was going to go. I was going to do things I never thought I was going to do. I was going to think things I never thought I was going to think. I will go back to the beginning of my memoir, and I come back to it at the very end. And what does it mean to find someone that you fall in love and you have this partnership? And I remember my late wife asked me, only a few years before she passed away, she just said out of the blue, "Why do you love me?" And I didn't even have to think about it. I said, "You make me better than what I am, yet you make what I am okay to be." And I realized in the end that that's the essence. How do you get there? How do you find that person that makes you better than what you are? I mean, what a wonderful thing. You're better than what you are because you're with this person. But how you are, they revel in that. They love that about you, who you are. That's some magic sauce there. And I don't know how you find it. I know I've had it. I know other people have it and find it. So what could someone tell me before I started this whole journey that maybe would have made a difference? I don't know. I don't know, other than slow down. It's not a race. Being the fastest is not going to make you a winner. These are, take people for who they are. Be grateful, be kind, and be you. And I think I started to not be me. Maybe that's the bottom line. Try to be true to yourself. It's when you start getting off that line that's not true to who you are. Then, at least for me, I guess, that's where I really got in trouble and went down rabbit hole after rabbit hole.
All right. I wanted to say, in reading your book, I loved reading the book because
Thank you.
I could relate to so many of the experiences that you were having. You were putting yourself out there. And if you put yourself out there, there's going to be a lot of one and done dates, but at the same time, You've got some great stories to tell that we can all learn from. This is, again,
Thank
another
you.
reason why I really loved your book.
Thank you.
And I want to say, thank you for taking the time to go over some of the stories, because I know some of the listeners are going to find the stories interesting. So tell us a little bit more about where we can find your book.
Sure.
Any
Happy
final thoughts or information on how they can get it Amazon, where it's available?
The book is, the easiest way is on Amazon. It's also available at Barnes & Noble. It's available in 4 different formats. It's hardcover, softcover, ebook, and there's an audiobook version out as well. So however you do your reading or book consumption, there's a way for you to read To Venus and Back, One Man's Quest to Rediscover Love.
Okay, Turner, thanks so much. One of the biggest takeaways from this 3-part conversation is that midlife dating is not just about finding the right person. It's also about learning how to read people more clearly, managing your expectations, respecting your own limits, and understanding that everybody brings a history. Turner's journey makes that real, and we're only getting a Reader's Digest version of these experiences, as there are many additional date experiences that he had that we didn't even get a chance to go over. Some of these stories are funny, some are painful, some are surprising, but they show what happens when a thoughtful man keeps stepping forward, keeps learning, and eventually decides that chasing love should not come at the cost of losing himself. If this series connected with you, I strongly encourage you to check out Turner Grant's book, To Venus and Back, One Man's Quest to Rediscover Love. It gives you an even deeper look at these stories, the choices, and the lessons behind this conversation. And if you're enjoying the Midlife Dating Podcast, please make sure to follow the show and share it with someone who needs it. And stay tuned for more conversations designed to help baby boomers and Gen Xers date smarter and with more confidence. Okay, guys and gals, stay positive, be present, be intentional, and remember, you may be just one evening away from a date that changes everything. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Midlife Dating Podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Midlife Dating Without the Crisis. Eager for more dating support? Visit 50datesat50.com for lots of free quality content. Get access to dating and relationship commentary, advice, Q&A, funny stories, movie and book reviews, along with other resources to help 50 daters sort out the pretenders and find quality dating and relationship-minded people. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.